So, Raven's latest film, Finding Tony, is an award-winning sports drama with NBA star Anthony Davis serving as one of the executive producers. But what truly sets Raven apart is this. She does not just inspire people, she equips them. She has worked with tens of thousands of students, educators, CEOs, business leaders, and emerging professionals. And her best-selling book, The 7 Practices of Prosperous Women, has become a signature foundation for her keynote experiences. So if you are ready for practical networking wisdom, career growth strategies, and the kind of leadership mindset that moves you into your next level, you are in the right room. So please join me in giving a big NextGen networking welcome to Raven Goodson.
Good evening. I said good evening.
Good evening.
There we go. Thanks so much, first of all, to WICT Carolinas for inviting me here tonight. It is a privilege as well as an honor to be able to speak with you. A special shout out to Michaela Brox for inviting me here tonight. When I was asked to speak here at this networking event, the first thing that came to my mind was probably what comes to a lot of your minds when you think about networking. You think about the old adage, what do they say? It's not what you know, it's who you know. Exactly. And I think about that all the time, and to be honest, it's true, because there's so many opportunities that I was even given because I was in the right room. I knew the right person. Or someone was in the room that knew me and mentioned my name. So it's extremely important to understand that concept, yes. But as I was thinking about what to say tonight, I started thinking to myself, it's not just about who you know. What may be even more important is becoming the type of person that other people want to network with. Because if you're in this room, I'm sure there's something that you want to accomplish, there's something you want to do. Maybe you think you're going to meet the right person tonight, but it's not about everyone else. We can only change ourselves, right? We can only look in the mirror and take action to become the best leaders that we can be, and hopefully we become that person people want to network with. So tonight, I'm here to talk with you about the 3 Ds, dedication, determination, discipline, as you're on your journey moving forward in whatever it is that you may want to do. The first 3D is dedication. And dedication is really giving your time, giving your effort to what it is that you want to succeed in. And there's something here that I know you want to do. And I think sometimes we can underestimate the amount of work that it takes to get to where we want to be. I remember a few years ago, I was speaking at a women's conference. And I was giving them advice. I was speaking on my best-selling book, 7 Practices of Prosperous Women. And afterwards, I had a woman come up to me. And I won't say she had an attitude, but she was frustrated. That's what I want to say. She was frustrated. She said, Raven, you give all this great advice, and I hear what you're saying, but there's just not enough time in the day. There's not enough hours in the day. I want to do X, Y, Z. She was telling me about her business plan. And she said, but I need to write the business plan so I can take it to the bank, and there's just so much to do. But I don't have time to write this business plan. So I let her vent. I let her kind of give it to me, and then I looked at her and I just asked a random question. I really didn't go into what she was saying. I just asked her, do you like to watch TV? She didn't really understand where I was going with that. She said, oh yeah, I love to watch TV. So I said, okay, what do you like to watch? She gave me like 5 or 6 shows that she loved to watch. And as you heard in the introduction, I am a filmmaker. So I'm really into film and TV. So I happened to know that the 5 or 6 shows she listed were all in season. So I asked her, I said, are you all caught up? She said, yes. She said, every week I make sure I'm caught up on these shows. And then her face changed. I could tell she was starting to get where I was going with that. And I looked at her and I said, okay, you just gave me about 6 hours per week that you could spend using your business, doing your business plan. And she said, you know what, Raven, you're right. And it took me just making that analogy to her, but it's true in life. You know, we're never going to just find the time to do anything. We got to make the time for what we say is important in our lives. And so that's what dedication is, and it's true in my own life. Because we all have 24-hour days. And notice I didn't say we all have the same 24-hour days. I'm a mom. I'm a wife. My 24 hours 5 years ago, when I didn't have kids, even when it was just me and my husband and that, is so much different than what it is now. 6-month-old at home, a 2-year-old, you have little kids. So I'm not saying we all have the same 24 hours, but what I am saying is that we have 24 hours. And so you can make the choice with how you spend those 24 hours. And for me, you heard a little bit, yes, in school, I did graduate valedictorian. I had a 5.1 GPA, I graduated at 16. I went to college, go Tigers, Clemson University. I went to Clemson, graduated from the honors college at 19 with a 4.0. And so a lot of people would like to tell me, you're just smart. Now, I'm not going to sit here and act like God didn't give me intellectual capabilities. I know He did, but in order to do that, I still had to work hard, okay? When I went to college, I was so used to getting all these A's. Took my first economics class, honors. I failed my first exam. I was shaking. I failed it. I remember calling my mom, like, oh my gosh, Mom, I failed this test. I don't know what I'm going to do. I dropped out. And she was just like, right, you're going to figure it out because you always do. And I did, okay? I could have easily just been like, you know what, I failed it. I honestly could have maybe dropped the course. I could have just said, okay, maybe the most I get out of this class is a C. But I said, you know what, I'm going to use the same mentality I had in high school, now in college, and I'm going to get this A. The teacher, professor, is super smart. But it was one of those professors, you know, sometimes they're so smart, it's hard to kind of translate and teach. So super smart wasn't the best professor in my opinion. A lot of students felt the same way, but didn't use that as an excuse. I would go home and find quizzes and tests online that I could take to help me understand the material. I would read on things that he wasn't even necessarily teaching on so that I could understand the concepts. I would make appointments to see this professor on his office hours if I really didn't understand something. I put in that time, I put in that effort. I said, you know what, when there's a will, there's a way, and I'm going to do it. And I ended that class with the highest average, got the exemplifying exam, got my A, graduated from Clemson with a 4.0. But it just goes to show, thank you, that when you say something's important, are you willing to go that extra mile? Because guess what? There's no traffic jams on that extra mile. That's true. Even now, like I said, I'm a mom and I have a busy schedule, and sometimes I get caught up in what I just said, you know, be like, I'm tired, I'm busy, there's no way I can do this. And I kept getting, I guess, inquiries from people about making a course. My 7 practices, I've spoken all across the country about them. And people kept saying, okay, what if I can't come see you speak live? Can you make the course? And I was like, sure, this has like been a year in the making. Sure, I'll make the course, and just kind of never got around to it. And I looked in the mirror one day and I was like, Ray, you gotta take her on class. If you say this is important, and I kept saying I wanted to do it, you gotta just put the time in the calendar and do it. And so I just made up my mind. A few weeks ago, I said, I'm gonna get this done. So while the 6-month-old and the 2-year-old were still sleeping at 5 in the morning, went in another room, had the baby monitors up, and I started recording. And I was like, wow, I got a lot done. The next morning, did the same thing, and then the grandparents had the babies, and me and my husband were about to go out, and I told them, okay, give me an hour or two, let me record some more, and I got the course done. But it's just a matter of what I'm saying. If you say something is important, you got to give that time and effort to complete it and to make it happen. I also wanted to encourage you not to get caught up in the how. Because I think a lot of you and a lot of us, we do understand, okay, if I want to do X, Y, Z, it's going to take work. I think in general, we're old enough to know things take hard work. But I think sometimes we get caught up in that how. Well, how is this going to happen? I have this dream on my heart. I have this thing I want to do, but how? And, you know, it's not always about seeing the full staircase. It's about taking that first step. And we get so caught up in the how, we have analysis paralysis, and a lot of times we just don't take that first step. And I love the analogy, I use it all the time, about just driving in your car at night. If you really wanted to, you could drive across the country at night in your car. Is it because you can see New York from LA? No. It's because you can see the 200 feet in front of you that your headlights allow you to see. And that's what taking the first step is like, because when you take the first step, something will reveal itself to know where to take the next step and where to take the next step. And sooner or later, you're going to look up and you're going to be across the country, even through the night, because those headlights kept revealing the next 200 feet, and the next 200 feet, and the next 200 feet. So you have to, every single day, do the most with what you have where you are. That's all you can do. So let's stop today with the analysis paralysis. Don't worry about how. How am I going to get there? What can I do today that will get me closer to where I know I want to be? That's what dedication is. Now, the second 3D I want to talk to you about is determination. And that's having the mental capacity to keep going even when life happens. Because guess what? Life is going to happen. Life is definitely going to happen. It always does. But let's go back to the car analogy. Driving down the road, so you got your GPS. If you make a wrong turn and your GPS is on, what happens? Right. Recalculating. Recalculating. Your GPS doesn't shame you. It doesn't yell at you. It doesn't kick you when you're down. It doesn't call you stupid. So don't do that to yourself. Recalculate. Adjust. What the GPS does is now it has new information and it adjusts based on the information that it has. So when we make mistakes, when we have setbacks, when we have quote-unquote failures, adjust. With the new information that you now have, recalculate. And that's how I want you to think about things when you do have those setbacks or you do make mistakes. Because it's so important that we don't give up. You know, you take a girl who was a highly competitive figure skater. And she thought she was going to the Olympics, did not. And because she didn't make the Olympics, she was devastated at first. But she said, you know what, I'm going to pivot. And she became the youngest editor at Vogue. She was there over 17 years. And then she said, you know what, I want to pivot again. And at 40 years old, a lot of times I speak to high schoolers, speak to elementary school students, speak to college students, and they think by 25, I don't have this figured out, I'm a failure. No. At 40, she said, 40 is not old, don't get me wrong. She said at 40, despite everyone thinking you gotta have your life together at 20, 25, 30, 35, I'm going to start a bridal boutique. Vera Wang, we've heard the name, you know who Vera Wang is, the rich celebrities, they all get their wedding dresses designed by Vera Wang. But that was not her route. You know, she started off as this Olympic hopeful in figure skating, but she ended up where she was meant to be. You take a woman that was newly divorced, on welfare, had a small child, but had an idea for a story that she said, you know what, I'm going to write down. I'm going to make it a book. She said, this is a good book. I know this is a good book. And we do that. We make things that we know it's good. She sent it off to a publisher. They said no. Sent it off to the second publisher. They said no. Third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th publisher all said no. 11, 12, no, we don't want anything to do with this. They told her this book is not good, it's unrealistic, and no one will ever care about that Harry Potter kid. We know. And now J.K. Rowling is literally the richest author in the world, worth over $1 billion. Harry Potter has his own theme park. But just think if she would have given up when that publisher told her no. When the 10th one said, no one will ever read this book, she didn't give up, she believed in her dream. You take a girl who was born to a teenage single mother in Mississippi. Born into poverty, told all her life, you'll never amount to anything. But she said, you know what, I want to be on TV. I want to tell people the story. She got the opportunity to be on TV. She was a reporter. And that didn't last long because it was said, you're not the right place. Your eyes are too far apart. You're just not doing what we think you should do as this reporter. She could have given up then, but she didn't. She said, no, I have stories to tell. And Oprah Winfrey went on to have the #1 talk show in the world. She has her own network now. Everyone knows who Oprah is. But what if she got down when people said she didn't look good on TV? You take a guy who was cut from his high school basketball team. He could have given up. Maybe I'm just not good enough. Maybe the sport isn't for me. But over the summer, he ended up growing 6 inches. Went back and tried again. Tried out for the team, made the team. Went on to play at the University of North Carolina. Went on to play with the Chicago Bulls. Who am I talking about? Exactly. Michael Jordan. He went on to be known as the GOAT. And I think he's the GOAT. LeBron. But that's a whole other conversation. But no, what if he was giving up when someone said that he wasn't good enough? So you got to keep these things in mind because there's a dream in your heart. There's something that you have in your head. There's an idea that you have that maybe someone said, are you sure? If you believe in it, you keep pushing forward. You keep moving forward. You don't give up. The list goes on, and I really want you to pay attention to these stories because a lot of times we hear the success part of it. We see these people on TV, and we see their highlight reel. But they had moments when they wanted to give up. They have behind the scenes, just like we do. In my own life, I've had my own setbacks. I've had my own quote-unquote failures. Yes, I was this national gymnastics champion when I was younger, but I had a knee disease causing pain every day in practice. To the point where, you talk about load management in the NBA. I'm 12 years old, and my coach is saying, we got to ice today, you can't practice. And it was hard. Then I ended up having 3 surgeries that sidelined me from sport that I just really, really wanted to do. And then even when it came to writing my first book, I published my first book at 12. Someone told me that book won't get published. Nobody wants to hear what an 11-year-old has to say. It became a bestseller. When, I go to college, and this should be the best time of my life, and I really enjoyed Clemson. I had an amazing time. But my last year there, here I am, 19, I'm ready to graduate. I drive back home. I live about an hour away from campus. I go to the doctor, and the doctor said, Raven, because I'm 19, he's like, is your mom nearby? You know that, no one wants to see, is your mom nearby? Because I want to talk to you in my office. Do you think she can get here? I said that she's at work. Her work really is only about 5 minutes away. I said, I can get her to come. He said, we found a lump in your breast. Now I'm 19 years old. I'm thinking, what are you telling me right now? So my mom ends up coming to the office and tells me we want you to see a breast cancer surgeon. We're referring you over just immediately. We want you to. So I go to the breast cancer surgeon, I get the ultrasounds, and he says, this one worries me because, I won't go into all the medical details, but how the edges of the tumor looks and different things like that, so they scheduled the surgery. Now mind you, I'm driving back and forth from Clemson because I never missed class through all of this. So I would go to class, go to the doctor, go to class, go to the speech, go to the doctor. So it's it really took months to end up having my surgery because I was just, going back and forth and had different obligations. So I have the surgery, and I wake up, and I'm looking at my mom, because I want to know, what did they say? And she looked at me with tears in her eyes from overboard. But no, they were happy tears. She told me that the tumor was benign. Now, obviously that's the best news in the world, but that situation definitely changed how I view life. At 19 years old, I was like, wow, we're not here forever. Just really live your life in the best way possible because we aren't here forever. And that really just changed my perspective on life. People say, Raven, how are you so calm and positive most of the time? I'm like, it's because of that. There's always the worst issue to have. I think about what if it wasn't benign and the course of my life was different. So I just, always give thanks to God for that. But it's about, moving forward through adversity. Even my film, Finding Tony. My husband knows, Lord, he knows. That filming was wild. I thought we were not going to finish the film, from issues with crew and issues with losing locations and weather and egos. I was like, wow, I poured my heart and soul into writing this film and we're not even going to be able to finish. And then months later, I won the Best Director Award at the Barcelona Indie Awards over in Spain. So it's just, thank you. So I just encourage you, no matter what it is that you're going through or what situation that you find yourself in, to keep pushing forward. And I'll close with the final 3D is discipline. And discipline is super important because you can be dedicated, you can be disciplined. But guess what? Motivation doesn't last. And when you're disciplined, you know that there's certain things you have to do and you do it regardless of how you feel. That's true discipline. Because we're not going to feel great all the time. I'm a motivational speaker, I don't feel great all the time. There's mornings I wake up, oh man, I've got so much to do. I didn't sleep last night. Oh, the baby kept us up. But no, it's like, no, what did I say I was going to do today? And you got to do it regardless of the feelings. Like my husband will wake up and go work out, and I'm like, oh man, you can sleep in. He's like, no, I said I was going to do it. And I respect that from him. Like, we're disciplined people. When you say you're going to do something, you do it. And that's what discipline is about. But it's not just about just the do aspect. It's also about being prepared. And being prepared for opportunities even like this, in this room of networking. And I tell this especially when I'm speaking to my high schoolers and my college students. I'm like, be prepared because you just never know. And I'll tell you just a quick story, not political, it's just an example of how being prepared, like your life can change in a second. So I went to go here, this was years ago now, this is probably about 15 years ago, I was like 15, 16 years old. And so I went to go hear a bunch of women speakers. One of the women that was speaking was First Lady at the time, Michelle Obama. So she gives the speech. And afterwards, I, kind of wanted to meet her. I'm like, it's the First Lady, that would be really cool. She was speaking in a city that I had actually been interviewed in before. And so there was a reporter that immediately recognized me, just like how you're standing here, just kind of looked and said, Raymond, come here. Like, remember I did that story on you. So he was about to interview First Lady. He looks at her and says, oh my gosh, you have to meet Raymond. She's like 16 years old, and she has this book, and she's this, and he just starts bragging on me, and I'm just standing there. And so she looks at me, and she just is like genuinely interested in my story. So she looks at me, and she says, I want a copy of your book. And I was like, really? She's like, yeah, you have one with you? No. I said, but there's one in my mom's car. Like, I don't know why I said that. And she looked at her security, and she looked at me, and she said, how far is your mom's car? And I was like, oh, it's just right there. And my mind, we were like, wait. Oh, it's just right there. I have on these 6-inch heels. I'm like, just wait. I promise you that. I'm running. I go get the book, run back. She's still there. And I bring her the book. And she says, can you sign this to me? I was like, yes. Please, Sasha. So I signed it to them, the three of them. So I signed this book, and it was a lesson, even being a teenager. It was a lesson because she looked at me, and she got kind of serious with me, like a big sister, mom type of figure. And she said, Raven, you have a great story. People will take interest in it. Don't walk around here and not be prepared for an opportunity. Just keep a copy of your book with you. And it stuck with me, obviously. Just to be prepared, you just never know. You never know. And so that opportunity, like I said, it stuck with me. It molded like how I operate and just being prepared for opportunities. And that's what I encourage you to do as well. Whether it's a book you're writing or an idea that you have, flesh it out. Like, even if you don't have an investor yet, or you haven't gotten that guest yet, you don't know when it's coming. So be prepared. I also say be disciplined about the people you choose to keep in your life. It's very important because the people you keep in your life can either make or break you. I'm just being completely honest. Their attitudes, their beliefs, what they believe and pour into you. And I always compare the people in your life like the different parts of a tree. You know, you have your branches, you have your leaves, you have your roots. Your leaves, one day they blow left, one day they blow right. One day these people are your best friend, and the next day they hardly speak to you. I mean, most people in life are like this. But then you have your branches on that tree. And your branches can fool you because you think they're strong and they're there for you through the thick and the thin. And as soon as a strong storm comes through, they leave you high and dry and they break. You have very few people in your life who are going to be like the roots on that tree and hold you down and hold you steady. And you might find one or two people like this in your lifetime, and that's okay. Just be able to recognize who's in your life for that reason, season, or lifetime. Because sometimes we can get really messed up when we put lifetime expectations on people who should only be in our life for a season. So be careful with that. And then the last thing is being disciplined with your attitude. Because every morning you have a choice. You have a choice to wake up and have a good day, to have a bad day, and you have a choice to say on a scale of 1 to 10, I am a 10, or maybe I'm just a 4 or 5. And you might look at me and say, "It's not that easy." I didn't say it would be easy. You never heard me say it was going to be easy. I just said you have a choice. Me and my husband were dealing with a whole bunch of stuff today, and we just had to laugh about it. Like, we have a choice to let this bother us, or smile, listen to some music on our way up to Charlotte, and have us a good night. So it really is about the choices that you make. And before I leave, I just want to end on a high note. I want you to repeat after me, okay? I am a 10.
I am a 10.
I walk like a 10.
I walk like a 10.
I talk like a 10.
I talk like a 10.
I get what I want.
I get what I want
When I want it.
when I want it.
Because I always do.
Because I always do
What I ought to do.
what I ought to do
When I ought to do it.
when I ought to do it.
I'm healthy.
I'm healthy.
I'm wealthy.
I'm wealthy.
I'm smart.
I'm smart.
I'm strong.
I'm strong.
I am a 10.
I am a 10.
Now that may seem a little silly, but when you repeat things to yourself over and over again, you do start to believe what you're saying is true. That's why I say there's so many pathological liars in the world. No, really. You have people who will lie to themselves over and over and over again, so they really start to believe what they're saying is true. So if we can flip this around into something positive and wake up every morning and say, I am a 10, I walk like a 10, you'll start to believe what you're saying is true. So before I leave, I want you to repeat after me again, and this time like you really, truly mean it. I am a 10.
I am a 10.
I walk like a 10.
I walk like a 10.
I talk like a 10.
I talk like a 10.
I get what I want.
I get what I want
When I want it.
when I want it.
Because I always do.
Because I always do
What I ought to do.
what I ought to do
When I ought to do it.
when I ought to do it.
I'm healthy.
I'm healthy.
I'm wealthy.
I'm wealthy.
I'm smart.
I'm smart.
I'm strong.
I'm strong.
I am a 10.
I am a 10.
Give yourselves around. Thank you again so much for having me. I do hope that something I said tonight will resonate with you for the rest of your life or with your life. I have questions. They did say I have a few minutes to answer any questions that anyone may have. So if you have any questions, I'd love to. Oh, yes. There is a QR code. Thank you. For some free resources that I have. There's like a Prosperous Starter Pack and just some resources I have. You can scan the QR code. Like I said, it's free. So thank you for putting that up there. And I do have a few minutes to answer